happy to introduce Katy Murdoch from BAFTA Albert with her top tips on how to green your production.
I'm going to go 1 to 10 in no particular order, but stay tuned because number 10 is last but not least. It's my most important one. Starting with tip number 1 is to start early in production. So sustainability touches everything that we do, from the way we travel, the way we what we eat, what we buy. It's not just an add-on at the end of production. So we need to think about sustainability right from the writing stage, from development, from storyboarding through to the edit. So it gets embedded across all of our decision-making processes, which leads me neatly on to tip number 2, which is the decision-making process. So embedding sustainability in every single decision that we make along our production journey. It's sustainability is about the future. So, but without impacting the now. So we need to think about the future when we make decisions. And that could be a decision on which sort of equipment that we hire, or it might be a writing decision that you put in during the edit making process. So thinking that, to summarize, it's thinking about sustainability in all of our decision making processes. Tip number 3 is to get trained. So knowledge is king. So getting trained on sustainable production, on the climate context, on climate science, on environmental sustainability is really, really crucial. It'll help engage you, but it'll also really importantly help you to focus on the bigger areas of impact. You may learn things like, you know, recycling is not actually that effective, and let's focus on, for example, our energy usage. Tip number 4 is measuring our carbon footprint. And this is where the organisation, the project that I work for, can help. I work for BAFTA Albert Limited, and we have a carbon calculator tool which helps the screen industries to measure their carbon footprint. Without measuring, we can't manage. That's the saying, right, in business speak. But it really does help us to see those areas of impact that we can then start cutting and making a difference on. I advise you to measure your carbon footprint at the start of production, so to do a predicted carbon footprint. This will help you see which areas that we need to tackle the most and get those all important emissions reductions happening whilst we can effectively, rather than it be an add-on at the end of production. My tip number 5 is to work with your suppliers. So your carbon footprint is one thing, but actually about 80% of your impact in making production, whether it's a low budget production, a short, or a big natural history show, about 80% of your carbon footprint will come from the supply chain. So that's how your production is distributed and watched by the viewer, but it's also how your suppliers down the chain, so the equipment that you hire, the props that you use. So we can work with our suppliers, and we need to engage them really on the sustainability journey. One really effective way of working with suppliers is just to simply ask the question of them, what is your sustainability policy? Do you have one? And this can engage them. The more people ask them about their sustainability, that's going to get them to sit up, take notice, and make a difference. Tip number 6 is to think about lower carbon forms of travel. Even if you're working on a low budget production or a short, travel emissions are likely to be around 50% of your total carbon footprint. So we see this across the board at Albert. So we have productions from feature films, big natural history documentaries, through to the soaps, through to news, through to sports broadcast, and across the board, whatever the genre, travel emissions are about 50% of a carbon footprint of a production. So step on travel, the main thing is actually to reduce our travel, and we can do this by clever scheduling, say, or even using cloud-based technologies, remote filming, Zoom, can really reduce your travel emissions. But some travel will be inevitable. So where we have to travel, we can think hopefully of using lower carbon forms of travel, like electric taxis, for example. Tip number 7, I hope I'm not losing count, is to think about our energy consumption. So with more of us working from home and even editing from home, outside of the production office or even the studio, we can think about our energy supply in our homes now. So the important thing to look for is a renewable energy supplier that only does green tariffs. So Ecotricity or Good Energy are examples of 100% renewable energy suppliers. And that's a really easy but effective step to take in creating a sustainable production. Tip number 8 is the waste hierarchy. So thinking about reducing our waste, then reusing, and finally recycling, which is a pretty inefficient way actually of using the Earth's materials, really. So where possible, reduce your use of equipment, materials, props, food packaging, and makeup and everything else that's involved in creating production. If we can't reduce, then think about hiring, reusing, and end of life of equipment as well. So ideally, we can hire equipment or make sure it's reused after we've utilized it. Getting to that all important tip number 10, but before that, tip number 9 is once we've done all the good work on reducing our emissions and our environmental impact of production, a last step is then to offset any unavoidable emissions. So offsetting simply means drawing down the carbon emissions that we had to emit essentially in creating our production. So offsetting could be planting trees, it could be, there's other projects across the globe, such as investing in renewable energy in developing countries or helping with biodiversity gains in, say, the Amazon. But it's sometimes a feel-good factor to offset close to home. And there's some really good UK-based offsetting schemes for rewilding and for tree planting here on our own soil. So you can look at offsetting once we've done everything we can to mitigate our carbon emissions. So top tip number 10, and this is last but not least, when creating a sustainable production, we can reduce our impact as much as possible. But we've also got to think about the positive impact we can have through the on-screen and the editorial. So we all have influence, whether we're creating a short, a low budget production, a soap, a comedy, some news, we are influencing our audiences. And this, I talk to film producers and documentary makers all the time. Sometimes it can be really important to campaign and inform our audiences about climate change. But we can also influence just through normalizing sustainable solutions. For example, and this is my favorite example, is on EastEnders, having characters using reusable coffee cups, or driving electric vehicles, or eating a vegan bacon sandwich, for example. So the script's not even about climate change, but we're normalizing the solutions for a sustainable future just by showing characters doing the good work. So top tip number 10 is thinking about the on-screen climate context, both in dialogue, but also through normalization, using props and such like. Sustainability can be a real creative opportunity. It can be a real force for good within the screen industries. As I said, an opportunity and an engagement tool. So I hope that you have lots of fun doing all the good work, and do get in touch with Albert if you need any sort of help or resource. We're here to help you as content creators.